93 y'all, 131, the Grumpy Thelemic here with Thelemic Union. Today we're talking about understanding Aleister Crowley's The Book of Lies. So a lot of people have heard of this book, or maybe got it in a bookstore, picked it up, started to read it, and then immediately put it down because it made absolutely no sense. The Book of Lies is published by Aleister Crowley in 1913 or so, and there's a lot of important things in this book where Crowley explains himself in ways he doesn't elsewhere. It's also the source of several rituals that are very familiar to people, such as the Star Ruby and Star Sapphire, and is also the source of Theodore Royce's claim that Aleister Crowley actually knew the secret of the ninth degree of OTO. He had published it in this book, and so the urban myth goes that Royce read this book, recognized the ninth degree secret of OTO in it, and then initiated Crowley. Of course, the history might be a little bit different than that, but that's the story. So this is called Liber 333, or the Book of Lies, which is also falsely called Breaks, the wanderings or falsifications of the one thought of Frater Perdurabo, which thought is itself untrue. So even the title is pretty incoherent, or it seems kind of crazy, and that is because the Book of Lies is about the limitations of language and thought to convey truth. So anyone who has one of the later versions of the Book of the Lies, such as the version that has the black cover with the sun on the front, then each chapter has commentary that goes with it. Crowley actually even wrote commentary for the title page, where he says the number of the book is 333, as implying dispersion, so as to correspond with the title Breaks and Lies. So 333 or 333 is the number of Choronzon, which is the kind of demon of dispersion that one encounters in crossing the abyss. Choronzon isn't really a thing or an entity, it is the lack of coherence, the lack of being any one thing. So it corresponds to Da'at on the Tree of Life, where it is at the boundary of the abyss, but it cannot cross beyond it. So one of the common themes of Book of Lies is that anything below the abyss is false. Any kind of thought, any kind of language is inherently dualistic and therefore false. So the only kind of truth is this direct Gnostic, direct experiential knowledge that comes from spiritual experience. That's the only thing that can transcend the kind of contradictions of the mind and thought. So Crowley writes, the book is 333, implying dispersion, which is the nature of the mind according to Crowley, breaks and lies. Breaks is, one meaning of breaks are breaks in attention during meditation. And lies, this is the idea that if you can say something, it's a lie, because ultimate truth cannot be described in language. So Crowley says, however, the, quote, one thought is itself untrue, and therefore its falsifications are relatively true. The book therefore consists of statements as nearly true as is possible to human language. So Crowley is saying that language itself is incapable of expressing truth, so he kind of bends it, twists it, uses it in different ways so that the falsifications are relatively true. They're as close to true or approximate truth as much as possible. So publication class C and D, for the official for the grade of Babe of the Abyss. So this means that this is official illuminated instruction of the AA, class C, and class D is there because there are certain rituals in Book of Lies. So in chapter 25, you'll find the Star Ruby. In chapter 36, you'll find Star Sapphire, and there's also a couple others, such as the Mass of the Phoenix. This is official for the grade of the Babe of the Abyss because the nature of this book involves transcending the Ruach. The complete transcendence of the Ruach would represent crossing the abyss. On the Tree of Life, that's kind of jumping from Chesed to Bina. And so you are no longer identified with the mind, a sense of self that's dualistic. You cross the abyss, become a babe of the abyss, and then come out the other side as Nemo, or no man, as no one, because your identity is obliterated. So the book, as you may have noticed, starts with this question mark and this exclamation point. And then the book seems to actually start. However, those are actually considered by Crowley to be chapters. To understand those two chapters, so to speak, you have to know Crowley's text, The Soldier and the Hunchback. For anyone who doesn't know that, I'm not going to go through it right now, but I encourage you to look it up. One of the meanings of these things is that this represents the soldier as it is standing upright, and the question mark represents the hunchback as if the figure itself has a hunchback. In Crowley's writings, the question represents skepticism. The exclamation mark represents spiritual experience, the one thing that can transcend skepticism, as I was just discussing earlier. So these are actually the first 2 chapters of Book of Lies. And then the first real chapter is actually chapter 0, or chapter O, with an exclamation point to be specific. So Book of Lies, the first real kind of chapter, starts with this text that says O with an exclamation point and then a little footnote. So we should always read the footnotes when there are footnotes. It says the antiprimal triad, which is not God. Nothing is, nothing becomes, nothing is not. This is the negative veils of the abyss. It is Crowley identifying non-being, being, and becoming in one idea. This leads to the first triad, which is God. I am, I utter the word, I hear the word. Then there's the abyss, where the word is broken up. There is knowledge, knowledge is relation. These fragments are creation. The broken manifests light. Then we have second triad, which is God. God, the Father and Mother, is concealed in generation. God is concealed in the whirling energy of nature. God is manifest in gathering, harmony, consideration, the mirror of the sun and of the heart. Then we have the third triad, bearing, preparing, wavering, flowing, flashing, stability, beginning, and then the 10th emanation, the world. So anyone familiar with the Kabbalah and the Kabbalistic Tree of Life will realize this is a description of the Tree of Life. All credit to Lon Milo Duquette for this image, but he has placed the words on a depiction of the Tree of Life, showing that they match up one-to-one, basically. Right? So nothing is, nothing becomes, nothing is not. These are all referred to the negative veils. Then Keter is I am. Right? I utter the word, I hear the word. That is Chokmah and Bina. The abyss is here where the word is broken up. There's knowledge and relation. Then the second triad, Chesed, is God the Father and Mother concealed in generation. Gebura is God concealed in the whirling energy of nature, and so on. Right? So this is one example of how you need to understand Crowley's underlying thought process to understand what he's saying. And so on the page, this looks rather incoherent. It looks abstract, absurd even, but when you know that certain lines correspond to certain sephirot on the Tree of Life, it kind of opens up the meaning. Of course, I encourage you to always read the commentary. The commentaries are quite good. Crowley says this chapter, numbered 0, corresponds to the negative, which is before Keter in the Kabbalistic system. So that confirms that the O and the 0 refer to the negative veils, the negative or the not. The note of interrogation and exclamation on the previous pages are the other 2 veils. The meaning of these symbols is fully explained in The Soldier and the Hunchback. So the first 3 chapters of the Book of the Lies are the question mark, the exclamation point, and then O, or 0. Those chapters themselves represent the 3 veils of the negative. Then Crowley talks about the chapter begins by the letter O, followed by a mark of exclamation. Its reference is to the theogony of Liber Legis, as explained in the note, but it also refers to Cates Phallus and Sperma, and is the exclamation of wonder or ecstasy, which is the ultimate nature of things. Then in the note it says silence, Nuit O, Hadit, there should be a period in there, and then Rakur Kuit I. So what the hell is this saying? Well, this comment at the very end here, at least, is about literally just this tiny little part up here. That's not even the chapter, it's the title. It says O. Right, so O, it in one sense stands for 0, chapter 0, the negative veils. In another sense, it stands for the theogony of Liber Legis, of Thelema. The O is Nuit, the circle, the infinite circle. In terms of the exclamation point, the point of the exclamation point is Hadit. Right, so if you take that little point and the circle, you have Hadit and Nuit. Then the line of the exclamation point, that is one, that is Ra Wer Kuit, its manifestation, the universe. So O, exclamation point, is like saying Nuit Hadit Ra Wer Kuit. And it's identifying them all with not. And O with an exclamation point is a cry of ecstasy. So all of these together refer to Cateus Phallus, which is another way of saying lingam yoni, and sperma, which I hope you know what that refers to. Those are the idea that this is the Cateus, the O, the line is the phallus, and the dot is the sperma. Right? This exactly parallels what happens in the Gnostic Mass with the chalice, the lance, and the particle that is depressed into the chalice by the lance. It's an exact parallel. So in the end, this is an exclamation of the wonder or ecstasy, which is the ultimate nature of things. The O with an exclamation point is a very short way to refer to Nuit Hadit in Ra Wer Kuit, as well as the fact that this universe is enclosed in the law of lingam yoni, or Cateus Phallus, or the interaction or interpenetration of opposites, and that the nature of things is ecstasy, insofar as manifestation is Nuit and Hadit uniting together to create the universe, and therefore all things are an expression of that ecstasy. Right? All of that is tied up just in this O. So people focus on all these words which correspond to the tree of life and all that, of course, but there's an immense amount of meaning packed into this tiny little part at the beginning. So this is a great example of how Crowley thinks, how he writes. He packs in 3, 4, 5 layers of meaning that all correspond. They all add to one another. And in the end, you resynthesize that to understand that this O, this simple thing, refers to all those at once. All of those meanings at once. Of course, we could read the commentary for the rest of that chapter, where he says it harmonizes being, becoming, and not being, and that someone will recognize the Kabbalistic system in that chapter. But I don't want to explain everything in this book, of course. Half of the fun, or most of the fun, is really figuring out this stuff for yourself. I want to just demonstrate how you would approach this stuff and how you might interpret what Crowley is saying so it doesn't seem completely meaningless. Let's just take another chapter randomly, chapter 3. Right? There's some other chapters before this, there's a lot of chapters after this, but this is called the Oyster. It says, the brothers of AA are one with the mother of the child. The many is as adorable to the one as the one is to the many. This is the love of these. Creation parturition is the bliss of the one. Coition dissolution is the bliss of the many. The all, thus interwoven of these, is bliss. Naught is beyond bliss. The man delights in uniting with the woman in parting with the child. The brothers of AA are women, the aspirants to AA are men. Okay, so what the hell is going on here? Well, brothers of AA are masters of the temple. They are people who have made it to the third triad of the tree of life, which is called AA. Sometimes it's called SS, but AA refers specifically to that third triad in this sense, that people who are brothers of the AA are one with the mother of the child. The brothers actually are not themselves. They have emptied themselves in crossing the abyss. They have become Nemo and have become one with that mother, who is Babylon, the secret name of Nuit. Right? So the brothers of AA are those who have drained out their blood into the cup of Babylon and been able to cross the abyss and arise as Nemo in the city of the pyramids. So the brothers of the AA are one with the mother of the child. That child is Nemo in this case. Then we have the many is as adorable to the one as the one is to the many. So this next part is essentially a commentary on the Book of the Law, chapter 1, verses 28 through 30. Right? Remember this? None, breathe the light, faint and fairy of the stars, and 2, for I am divided for love's sake, for the chance of union. This is the creation of the world, that the pain of division is as nothing, and the joy of dissolution all. This is an idea that the none creates the 2 for love's sake. The 2 then unite and return back to none. Of course, if we go back one line, we have Crowley the prophet addressing Nuit, that none, as O Nuit, continuous one of heaven, let it be ever thus, that men speak not of thee as one, but as none. And let them speak not of thee at all, since thou art continuous. So this none is a better understanding of what normally in philosophy is the one. The two is the many. So in one way, we might read this as the one is divided for love's sake, for the chance of the union of many. Going back to the Book of the Lies, it says, the many is as adorable to the one as the one is to the many. So 2 is as adorable to 0 as 0 is to 2. This is the love of these. Creation parturition is the bliss of the one, meaning that the one or none or 0 divides itself. It creates, it parturitions, right? It separates itself. That is the bliss of the one to become many. And then the opposite end of this is coition dissolution is the bliss of the many, which is to say, for us who are manifested as 2, as many, our joy is to dissolve opposites back into 1. It's like this process of cosmic solva et coagula. The universe is 1, and so it divides itself into many so that it can experience itself. Then the job of the many is to reunite itself back to 1. Or in 0 equals 2 terms, the 0 has to coagula into 2, and then that 2 has to solve or dissolve back into 0. So it's this process of going back and forth between the one and the many, and that's the nature of the universe. The idea in Thelema is that the many is not evil or a problem. It is a good thing in a way. It is the possibility of experience, the possibility of union. So then we say the all thus interwoven of these is bliss. The all is that which goes through both of these processes of solva et coagula. In the macrocosm, that is Nuit. On the microcosm, that's the master of the temple. Naught is beyond bliss. So bliss is still a positive experience. It is still something. And naught is perfect silence beyond that bliss. Then we have these final 2 lines. The man delights in uniting with the woman in parting from the child. This is not about society. This is not about how men should be with women. This is not about how women should be with children. This is symbolism. The man delights in uniting with the woman. So this is the aspirant to the AA, or the aspirant to attainment, is a man. Insofar as they are active, they're striving upwards, and they're trying to unite with the woman, with the mother that we spoke about before. If you succeed, if you do cross the abyss, if you do dissolve into the mother, then the formula switches back around. Rather than solve, we have coagula. So then the woman delights in parting from the child. The man delights in uniting with the woman in parting from the child is basically literally another way to say this exact same line, right? Creation parturition is the bliss of the one. Coition dissolution is the bliss of the many. It's the same idea, different words. Then it says the brothers of AA are women, the aspirants to AA are men. Right? So now it makes a little more sense because the brothers of AA are those who have united with the mother. They are that mother. They are one with the cosmic woman, the cosmic mother of Babylon, whatever you want to call it. The aspirants to AA who have not yet attained are men. Right? So the man delights in uniting with the woman. This masculine formula is one of striving upward, of penetrating, of being active, and then the formula switches back around when you attain. All right, so let's see if our interpretation is correct. We'll read the commentary. It says Gimel is the high priestess of the tarot. All right, so Gimel is G in Hebrew, the letter G, and its number is 3, and this is chapter 3. This chapter gives the initiated feminine point of view. It's therefore called the Oyster, a symbol of the Yoni. In Equinox, Volume 10, Temple of Solomon the King, it's explained how masters of the temple, or brothers of AA, have changed the formula of their progress. Now these 2 formulas, solva et coagula, are now explained, and the universe is exhibited as the interplay between these 2. This also explains the statement in Liber Legis 1:28 through 30. Well, there you go. That's basically what I was saying before, that this chapter is actually about the formulas of solva et coagula, or 2 becoming 0, and then 0 becoming 2. and how this is true both on the macrocosmic scale of the creation of the universe through Nui, as well as the microcosmic universe of the Master of the Temple. All right, I'm just going to do one more chapter just so this doesn't drag on too long, and because, again, my point here is not to give you a complete, comprehensive understanding of the Book of the Lies, but an understanding of how you can approach it so that you can derive meaning from it. All right, so this is chapter 8. There are 93 total chapters of Book of Lies for reasons you might imagine, and we've only gone through 2 or 3 now, right? So there's a lot more for you to go through. It says, steeped horsehair. Mind is a disease of semen. All that a man is or may be is hidden therein. Bodily functions are parts of the machine, silent unless in dis-ease. But the mind, never at ease, creaketh I. This I persisteth not, posteth not through generations, changeth momently, finally is dead. Therefore is man only himself when lost to himself in the charioting. Weird chapter, right? What the heck is he talking about? Again, at first glance, it's complete gobbledygook. But let's assume that he is trying to say something coherent here. So he says, mine is a disease of semen. I wonder, does he mean this literally? Probably not. So if you read other chapters of the Book of Lies, you'll see that Crowley has this idea that the semen is the quintessential self, or the quintessential essence, the quintessence, right, of oneself. And so if you understand that man is a microcosm of the macrocosm of God, then each part of man corresponds to God in some way. And the physical body, the semen, represents the lifeblood of the individual, the true life with a capital L, the thing that persists through generations when individuals do not. So in Crowley's view, the semen is a symbol of the true self. It's the thing that carries our essence, our DNA, so to speak, our true will. And our mind and our body are really just kind of a vehicle for it. So in this way, again, we're not talking literally, but symbolically, that semen or sperm is a representation of your essence, what we might call your divine essence, the secret self, or whatever else. So it says, bodily functions are parts of the machine, silent unless in dis-ease. Right? So dis-ease is a play on words of disease and dis-ease. This idea is that our mind and our body are like machines. They only make sounds when they're broken or not working correctly. So the body is silent unless there's a problem, and yet the mind is never at ease, so it's constantly creaking. It's like this wagon wheel that's slightly messed up, so every single moment it keeps creaking over and over again. So the body, when it's fine, is silent, but the mind keeps saying I. Right? The mind keeps positing this sense of self. Then Crowley says this I, it doesn't persist. It does not keep going through generations. In fact, it changes every single moment, and then it's dead. So the mind, which creaks this I or sense of self, is a false self. Therefore is man only himself when he is lost to himself in the charioting. Right? So this is the idea that we are only truly ourselves when we empty ourselves of ourselves, when we are full of what we might call the will of God, or the charioting. Right? So the charioteer is the true will. The mind and the body are just the chariot, the machine. Right? The true will is meant to guide the chariot, and the self is the I that the mind keeps insisting on, that sense of self, that ego, is not the true charioteer. Our whole problem comes from this I insisting it is the charioteer, when in reality, it's just meant to be an assistant, right? The mind is meant to assist the will, not direct everything. That is the purpose of the will, is to direct the individual. And so it says the chapter is called Steeped Horsehair because of the medieval tradition that by steeping horsehair, a snake is produced, and the snake is the hieroglyphic representation of semen, particularly in Gnostic and Egyptian emblems. Again, semen, serpent, these are identical symbols to Crowley, by which he refers to the impersonal life, the infinite life, that which remains through the generations, that which persists through generations, life itself. The meaning of the chapter is quite clear. He says the whole race consciousness, That which is omnipotent, omniscient, omnipresent is hidden therein. Therefore, except in the case of an adept, man only rises to a glimmer of the universal consciousness, while in the orgasm, the mind is blotted out. So he is saying that sexual orgasm is a kind of physical analogy to the universal consciousness, a phrase he uses, of the adept. I'm not going to go through this chapter. This is chapter 15, but I wanted to show you that the more you read Book of Lies, the more things start pointing toward each other. You can start to understand what they're referring to. So in the middle of this, I'm just going to skip the beginning. It says, I am not I am but in hollow tube to bring down fire from heaven. This is the night where I am lost, the love through which I am no longer I. It's the exact same idea in chapter 15 here as in chapter 8, which we just looked at, where the true self comes out when the self is lost in the charioting, or when I am no longer I. And then Crowley says, this chapter is quite clear, but my one remark in the last paragraph is a reference to the nature of samadhi, i.e. the union of subject and object, where you lose your sense of self. That sense of I is dissolved. It says, as a man loses his personality in physical love, so does the magician annihilate his divine personality in that which is beyond. The formula of samadhi is the same from the lowest to the highest. The rosy cross is the universal key, etc., etc. So again, his chapter is almost a clarification of chapter 8, or vice versa, where he's talking about the nature of attainment in samadhi, dissolving the sense of self so that you're a kind of hollow tube for the will of God, or the true will. All right, so that's it for today. I could go on for probably hours going through each of these chapters one by one. Hopefully this was helpful for some of you guys who find Book of Lies unapproachable, or finds Crowley's writings in general unapproachable. I hope to show that there's meaning in there. There's something worth discovering in the Book of Lies, and there's something worth studying in there. The more you study it, the more you study Crowley's other writings, the more it will all start to make sense. You'll start to realize he's referring to the same ideas over and over again with different words. So again, I hope this was helpful for you. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Please leave a comment if you enjoyed it. Let me know any ideas for future videos if you'd like to see any. And check out our website, ThelemicUnion.com. There's lots of articles. There's magic course on there if you want to learn how to start doing Thelemic magic. As always, appreciate your time. See you in the next video. 93.